Hi, welcome. This is part two of my response by way of this proposed trainer legislation pertaining to licensing being proposed in the state of New York. And the video you see here, Tom Davis, responding to the Balanced Dog Trainer reaction to this legislation. So let's play some more of this by way of Tom Davis, his take on this legislation.
Like the Senate, and then all these things start to happen. Like, hey, should we do this? Should we vote on this? Should we pass this? Should we not? And literally, you can put out, I think every dog in New York State needs to be brown or white, and so every other dog needs to be destroyed. I mean, you could bring that, and it would come up into these conversations. So anyway, it's just crazy how this works. But again, I wanted to give you my 2 cents, and more importantly, I think just let you guys know that it's happening. So many times these bills get kind of snuck in there and stuck under the rug and keep hush hush and be like, hey, we need to pass this because of these reasons. And the way that they're written is extraordinarily subjective, right? To the person who is putting these things together. Like, if you don't pass this, the world and doom and puppies and babies die if we don't do this. And so I just wanted to bring it to your attention, talk about it, give you my thoughts on it. And so what's happening? New York State, I'm reading this from the ICP. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it over here. What's happening? New York State lawmakers have introduced legislation, Senate Bill S7723 and Companion Assembly Bill A6985, that would establish mandatory licensing requirements for individuals providing basic obedience training to pet dogs. Now, my thoughts on having... Okay, so I think that the licensee thing is more of a money grab from New York State than anything. We want every single pet-related business, because then they're going to do daycares and dog walkers and groomers and everything.
So he's talking about licensing. Now, here's the thing: as a dog trainer, a business owner, I mean, there's the standard license, okay, that you get. So licensing. So saying could be a way to make more money. Well, there certainly could be. The motives could be there for that as well. Okay, there could be some underlying motivations for more of a kind of a taxation through legislation. But the problem here is what does this represent? And that could be part of it. But the problem here is the fact of what agenda, what is it pushing as a method? Okay, it's pushing this force-free agenda. That's the problem.
Everything. And there's a significant difference between having a license and having credibility and experience and certifications. I mean, they're all kind of different compartments. But
we talk about this. So in the dog training world too, I talk about why there's no, even in the service dog training industry, they're going forever. There's no standard per se. It's just loosey-goosey, right? It's just like anyone can just call themselves a dog trainer and have at it because, of the confusion here, because of this, this appearance-based idea of what training is. Okay, it's non-specific that way. When you get into that's why I talk about what's the criteria. Because when you talk about the criteria itself to establish something, now we're getting specific. Right, so you go up on my Facebook page, look at that question at the top. There's the criteria. So you get into the actual criteria part that reveals what the truth is as to what defines change. Now now I bring about influence and control. There's your criteria. Okay, there's the criteria. I show it. I establish it, right? It's right there. And so, but when you got the 99% of the dog training world that's not aligned with what the criteria is, okay? That's why you see chaos. You see this, it's a power play, right? This back and forth between these groups of trainers trying to push certain things through, but it's not based on truth. It's not based on the criteria that represents a process properly at all. And so this just becomes about a corrupted system, a corrupt agenda, and this is about the human trying to control something. Right? It isn't about dogs now. If it was about dogs, this wouldn't be happening in the first place. So this was never about, what is in the best needs of dogs, what represents a process that way. So just think about what's happened. So this is a power play, right? So this is to try to override even the force-free agenda. Isn't about, the last thing they want is a proper study, even though they then at the same time trying to label this as evidence-based. It's so contradictory. They're bypassing what even represents science, right? All the problems in the dog training world are not, science confronts the real problem. Science seeks truth. This agenda does not. It's totally corrupted to the core. So in a lot of academics who are supposed to be, that you're supposed to put your trust in, right? As, as the kind of key holder, gatekeeper for science. Well, this is a really a great or a bad example, depending on how you want to see it. It's just how corrupted something can be. You're seeing it. Because you have to, this is why, I put out my series flipping the script. And even when I went on and did the debate with a balanced dog trainer on Miracle Canine, I went through all, many of the controversies and lined it up. Balanced dog trainers don't want to talk about any of that. I mean, real science is supposed to confront that stuff, to say, okay, like what's going on here? Instead of just trying to move on or ignore or get personal and try to cancel somebody. Because now you have cancel culture. So you have all these things happening that shouldn't be happening. But they are.
A license would essentially be a way for New York State to collect money. And a lot of times they then associate it with like kind of checklists. And part of these checklists are now, and I think, I don't know, but that's why I want to talk about it. But these bills would direct the Department of Agriculture and Markets to create licensing standards that exclusively endorse non-aversive, evidence-based, positive reinforcement training methods and prohibit others. So that means if you train or you have a dog, you can't train a dog any other way than what they're saying, right? So
well, here's the interesting thing, okay? So talk about this, appearances, right? Within the framework of superficial response, right? The criteria is in there. So the whole thing about what represents change is flawed, right? There's no, because the criteria isn't established to this approach. It does not reconcile the criteria that's required. It doesn't allow for it. It doesn't meet the criteria, but it doesn't even recognize what the criteria is. It's based on appearances, okay? And so therefore it lacks depth, it lacks context. It's based on inherently flawed assumptions. So as dogs are moving around doing the sit down, come and stay, right? Even balanced dog trainers define success that way, which is, again, totally flawed. I show it. It's just like, that's why I keep talking about the parenting example, like the selfish child. Sure, you can get, in the middle of a relationship problem. See, there's where you get into the whole thing with the dots connect now, right? So just like I talk about why you go into a training in the first place, because you're experiencing a relationship problem. And just like I talk about the selfish child, behavioral issues escalate as a child becomes more and more selfish. Dogs as social animals, okay, as they gain more and more control in their relationship with their owner, behavioral issues escalate right to the point of aggression, right? So, you start to tie all these things together, but then you get this thing about defining evidence-based or what defines a standard. What are they basing that on? They're basing it on superficial responses that are not defined, not established as to whether or not those responses can be trusted, because it's based on assumptions which are flawed. And how you can know that is that if you start to, again, connect dots, how many dogs end up still being destroyed or owners dealing with a relationship problem after they leave the training environment and they get their certificate saying good job, and there's a huge number, right? That happens. That's part of it for a reason, because trainers are just looking at the surface. Okay, this is a superficial idea of things. It's not based on what training truly represents. It's an intervention. And now people's feelings are all caught up in this, because this is the problem when people take societies become very permissive, right? Very emotionally based, very permissive. And so this is a recipe for, it's a perfect storm. Okay, it's a recipe for disaster. And this has been going on, but balanced dog trainers, they're complicit. Okay, they're part of the problem here. They will get, I said, thrown off the fence. They're walking the fence, all right? They're playing both sides, and they need to get thrown off the fence. So this is how it's probably going to happen. And then things are going to get real bad, and then people will start, oh, what? But I'm putting it out here. Like, this is it. So force-free trainers don't like what I'm saying. But here's the thing. I get most pushback or heat from balanced dog trainers than force-free. But they're part of the problem. So, they're trying to stop this, approach it a different way, because I can confront it directly through what training is and isn't. I'm very, very specific. It's based on information. Balanced dog trainers can't do that. Right, because they're in agreement with approaches trainers that learn base. They just are trying to say, well, for some dogs, right? And this is the trap they're in. Like, this is a trap they're in. They can't get out of it.
Non-aversive. So again, like being objective, I'm going to walk through these things. Non-aversive. So let's just define aversive online, right? Aversive, causing strong dislike. Causing strong dislike. Okay.
So, this, I'll preempt what he's going to say here. Dislike, right? That's why I talk about even balanced dog trainers being able to reconcile the response, the reaction, the response to the relationship. I put out a great video. You can watch my YouTube channel called the ice cream truck example. Reconcile, taking it again to the parenting example with a child that is with a parent outside the ice cream truck. And they're getting ice cream, but the parent says no to the sprinkles, right? And you're a observer watching this interaction, and the child, you turn your head just for a split second, something kind of distracted you. You turn back, and the child is on the ground, rolling around, having a major fit, just out of control. And you look and say, that parent must have hit the child. Cause and effect, right? You say there's no way, there must have been a physical altercation, right? Based on merely on the response from the child. But see, that's the problem, right? It's the fact that the child's a brat, right? And heard the word no, verbally no. It was a reasonable, right? Response to the child. They're still getting the ice cream, but see, it's about relationship. Yeah, that's the thing here that's missing in this whole thing with balanced dog trainers as well. When you bring in just like parental influence, right? In that example, influence. I talk about influence and control, right? So influence is the parent is saying the word no. Control, influence is there, right? Try to shut that down. And the reaction from the child, it didn't represent a physical. It was a relational response, okay, to that, right? To that that type of relational dynamic, within the context of the roles, right? Social, right? So but then right? This is what's happening in the dog training world. Oh, the fit must have, hurting think about carried over to the dogs now, choking the dog, hurting the dog. Well, are they in these individuals? I'm not saying that, of course, you check for, physically to make sure, but most of the time when you're dealing with dogs that have gained a high level of control in the relationship, it's the same thing. Those reactions and responses, the dog's under stress now. And then when you bring a little bit of control into the mix, okay, you're going to have a high reaction from the dog. And see a lot of these individuals that are governed by their emotions and feelings, these are the same people pushing this legislation as well. They follow the path of bribery, accommodation, negotiation. So their response to any sort of reaction would be to follow the path of bribery to calm the waters. But see, the problem is I call it displaced blame part of this is where the blame falls on when the relationship doesn't get any better, because most cases it doesn't, because you're not actually fixing anything. Just in the moment, you're gaining agreeableness. I talk about the context of agreeableness relationally as well. The problem with certain concepts such as counter conditioning, why people are left spinning their wheels, or why they're not able to gain traction in the relationship. It's because this lack of context relationally with certain concepts, because the core ingredients aren't there. They need to be there to reveal. They need to be there to change. and then the ability to even reconcile the reactions properly from dogs. That's not what's going on here. That's not part of the dog training community that way, for the most part. And so, this whole thing about, feelings and just, and then there's collateral damage with all these dogs are being destroyed. See, people don't want to deal with that, to line it up properly, say, hold on here a second, let's sort this out. Let's connect. Let's see what's really happening here. Are we missing something? Is there a missing piece? Well, I'll say there's a lot of missing pieces here to the relational aspect, the social aspect of dogs, what defines a process and what defines, training. That's what's happening, but people don't want to deal with the truth because now we're at this level, and that we're in the danger zone. Okay, this is like danger zone stuff. This is like the perfect storm, but we're in the danger zone now because this is what happens. Especially when you have another group, and I see balanced dog trainers, they're like getting in the way. Not getting in the way, they've exploited this. They've made money off of it. They've kind of like had this their little kind of agreement that they signed with the Force Free, and it's been okay for a while. Or it's kind of like, oh, okay, you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. There's more than one way to train a dog. That's where that comes from, right? But now, as predicted, that can only go on so long because you're dealing with a type of belief system. Right, and so you're going to be thrown onto the rocks at some point. That's just the way it is. If I'm thrown onto the rocks, okay, over this legislation at some point, if I'm thrown, it isn't going to be because I didn't speak truth, right? Even balanced dog trainers don't like what I'm saying, so there's a difference there for sure. That's why people don't like what I'm saying. So we're going to stop part 2 here, but we're going to go through. I'm not going to go through all this video, but I want to hit on some key points here for some takeaways so people can understand why I say this legislation is a terrible way to deal with the problem. Okay, it's not the solution. Yeah, I'm not a balanced dog trainer. I don't support balanced dog trainers, but this has to move. This has to shake loose the right way. Okay, this has to, but if it happens, perhaps it still will. Okay, maybe this is because it's got to force people to ask the right questions. So I said this before, it has to get super, super bad before people will seek truth. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's got to get so bad because this is so hardwired into the dog training community, this idea of things. And we're at that point now. Thanks for watching.